Darjeeling Learning Hub welcomes you all. Today's episode we are going to study about the X-ray spectra. What is an X-ray spectra? What are the different types of X-ray spectra? And the explanation for these spectra. Finally, lines broadening of the spectra. All these things we are going to study here. First, what is meant by an X-ray spectra? We have already studied that the X-rays coming out from a Coolidge tube will have different intensities with wavelength. Bragg spectrometer could be used to study the intensity of the X-rays with various wavelengths. So, we can draw a graph between the variations in intensity with the wavelength. The graph is called the X-ray spectra. This X-ray spectra could be classified into two things. One is a continuous X-ray spectra, another one is the characteristic X-ray spectra. We can study what is meant by characteristic X-ray spectra and what is meant by the continuous X-ray spectra. You see from here, this X-ray spectra are produced by Bremsstrahlung collision. You all will know that when a fast moving electron approaches a nucleus, it interacts with the nucleus, and in that process it slows down and it is going out with a lesser energy. The difference between the two energies of the electrons could be radiated out as the X-rays. This is what we call it to be the Bremsstrahlung collision. Now let us imagine an incoming electron with an energy E1. When it approaches the nucleus, it interacts with the nucleus, and afterwards it goes out with a lesser energy E2. The difference between the two energies E1 minus E2 will be equal to h nu, and that comes out as the energy. In terms of wavelength, h nu can also be written as hc divided by lambda, which is shown here. Therefore, and we all will also know that the incoming energy is got from the voltage that you are applying to the filament. Therefore, E1 will be equal to VE. V is the voltage applied between the cathode and the voltage. Therefore, the intensity of the X-rays depends upon the voltage that you are applying. Therefore, the energy of the incoming electron could be equal to VE. And let us imagine the whole energy is given out in the process by the interaction, and it goes out with the energy E2 equal to 0. Now in this case, the maximum frequency that could be produced in the X-ray will be equal to nu maximum, and the energy of the electron will be equal to the X-ray photon would be equal to h nu maximum, which is shown here. Therefore, VE will be equal to hc divided by lambda minimum. Therefore, the minimum wavelength that could be produced could also be calculated by substituting the values of the voltage, the E, H and the C. Finally, we can calculate it to be 12,400 divided by V Armstrong unit. And this law you call it to be Donner-Hunt law. Therefore, continuous spectrum will have the maximum energy shown here. Therefore, it is ranging from lowest energy to the highest energy, lowest wavelength to the highest wavelength, the nu maximum, and therefore the spectrum will be a continuous spectrum, and this could be seen as shown in the graph here. Therefore, from this continuous spectrum, one could determine the Planck's constant. Donner-Hunt had calculated the Planck's constant very accurately by this X-ray spectra. That is, H will be equal to VE divided by C into lambda minimum. From this formula, he calculated exactly the Planck's constant. And now here, suppose if you are increasing the atomic number, when you increase the atomic number, it is found that the intensity of the spectrum also increases, but the shape does not depend on it. This is also what we have found out by Donner-Hunt. And similarly, Suppose if you are increasing the voltage between the cathode and the anode. When you increase the voltage V, automatically the intensity, maximum intensity also enhanced. When the intensity increases, the energy increases, automatically the wavelength will be shifted towards the lower wavelength side, towards the origin as shown in the graph here. Therefore, these high intensity waves, if you wanted to produce high intensity waves, what we have to do means we have to increase the voltage between the cathode and the anode. And now here, these high intensity waves are used in medicine as well as in industry. Usually, to produce a high intensity X-rays, tungsten filament could be commonly used because it can easily dissipate the heat to the target, to the copper anode, so that the heat can be reduced here. And this is about the continuous spectrum. And now what we can study the characteristic spectrum. How does it arises? Suppose if you are increasing the voltage between the cathode and the anode, it was found that for a molybdenum target, there exists a sharp peak overlapping on the continuous spectrum. This is shown in the graph here. So the continuous spectrum is also already existing, and at a particular wavelength we have a sharp peak. That continuous spectrum is a hill-shaped one, where this characteristic spectrum is a very huge building over that one. Therefore, this is similar to that of the building on a hilltop, and the graph also shows that. Therefore, whenever you are increasing the voltage between the cathode and the anode, there is a sharp peak with the high intensity which is superimposing on the continuous spectrum. The position of the sharp peak depends upon the nature of the target material for the same voltage. And now here, what is the mechanism here? Why this characteristic spectrum is taking place? What is the reason for this one? When the incoming electron, you see this figure, when the incoming electron knocks down an electron from the K shell, from the figure you can understand. So the incoming electron or the incident electron knocks down the K shell electron. Therefore, the K shell electron is going out, there is a vacancy. To fill the vacancy, any electron from the neighboring shell, from the L shell, or from the M shell, or from the N shell, can come down to the K shell. There is a possibility of any electron from the L shell or M shell or N shell and so on. Therefore, from anywhere else, another electron could jump into the K shell to fill the vacancy. Now, the difference between the two means if an electron jumps from the L shell to the K shell, then the difference between the two, L shell energy and the K shell energy, will be emitted as an X-ray photon, and that is called the K alpha line. That is called the K alpha line. Therefore, this transition is given by this equation: Ek minus EL should be equal to h nu, that will be equal to hc by lambda, or lambda should be equal to hc divided by Ek minus EL. And we call this spectral line, characteristic spectral line, as K alpha line. Similarly, K beta line means if it is transferred from the M shell to the K shell, then you call it to be K beta line. If it is from N shell to the K shell, it is K comma line. Therefore, we can have K alpha series like this. In the same sense, we could also have L, M and N series, but they will be having very low wavelength, that is shown in the graph here, and this is about the characteristic spectrum. The scientists mostly studied the characteristic spectrum of different elements. Of different elements he had studied. Say for example, he has taken aluminium first, from aluminium to gold, he had taken all the elements and he studied the relation between the energy and the atomic number. And there exists a relation, he found out a relation, there exists a relationship between the square root of the frequency of the characteristic X-ray of the target element and the atomic number. He found out the relation. And that relation is given by this equation, square root of nu is proportional to Z minus B, where B is called the shielding factor. What is meant by a shielding factor? In terms of taking the square root, nu should be equal to A into Z minus B the whole square, where A is the proportionality constant and B is called the shielding factor. B equal to 1 for K series and B equal to 7.4 for L series. What is the shielding factor? Say for example, when the K shell electron is knocked down, the energy of that electron contributing to the nucleus, the charge distribution of the electron with the nucleus will be equal to Z into E. When that one electron is removed, now the shielding factor will be equal to Z minus 1 because one electron is removed. And that one is called the shielding factor in the case of the K series. So similarly, we could also calculate for the L series, because there you are having 8 electrons should be shielded, therefore it comes to be 7.4 for the L series. So Moseley had derived this formula, and he had based upon the Moseley's law, the periodic table could have been arranged, because in the beginning the scientists have arranged according to their atomic weight, but in the later stage the physical and the chemical properties depends upon the atomic number alone, and based upon this Moseley had rearranged the periodic table. That's why cobalt comes in front of the nickel, whose atomic number will be equal to 27, and that of the nickel is 28. That's what I had written here. That's the importance of Moseley's law. And similarly, argon comes in the front than the potassium, and that's why the periodic table rearrangement could take place using the Moseley's law. Similarly, they have also studied the atomic number of the various elements. The atomic number could be easily determined, and they had also determined the atomic number of rare earth elements also. Similarly, if you see the graph here, in the graph he had drawn a graph relation connecting between the square root of the frequency with the atomic number. It is a straight line like this for K alpha line to K beta line, ranging from aluminium to gold, and this graph is like this. And he found that there is some discontinuity in the value of Z equal to 43, Z equal to 61, Z equal to 72 and Z equal to 75. There is a discontinuity in the graph shown here, and he said that some elements could be there, and based upon this scientists have found out the elements as technetium, promethium, hafnium and rhenium later on, and that's why that is the importance of the Moseley's law could be studied here. And now we can go to the final topic here, the line width of the spectral lines. What is the line width? Why we have to study the line width? What are the factors that influences the line width? We can study here. Suppose a molecule transit from a higher energy state to the lower energy state, you will have the emission spectrum. The difference between the excited energy and the ground energy will be emitted as the radiation, and you will have the emission spectrum. The intensity of the emission spectrum should be a line spectrum. But when you carefully study the intensity of the line spectrum using the spectrometer, you will have the slit of the spectrum. You can reduce the slit of the spectrum. Even if you reduce the width of the slit, the spectrum will go to only a certain value, and afterwards it won't decrease. You won't get a perfect line. There will be some broadening, some width must be there. The intensity of the spectrum could be studied using the line device. So using that device, we can study the intensity of the line spectrum or the spectrum that we have obtained using the spectrometer, and we found that the intensity increases to a maximum value as shown here in the spectrum, and thereafter it decreases instead of a line. So instead of a line, we have a broad spectrum like this, and that is called the spectral width. And how can we define the spectral width? For that, we calculate 2 points in the spectrum as shown here. Half intensity points could be taken, and you draw a line, a lower intensity point and a higher intensity point of half intensity, and that width is called the spectral width. The frequency interval, that frequency interval between the half intensity point is called the line width of the spectral line. This line width could be influenced by two factors. One is Doppler broadening, another one is collision broadening. Why the broadening is there? Two factors are influencing. One is Doppler effect. Another one is collision broadening. What is meant by Doppler broadening? That means inside the Coolidge tube, the atoms on the molecules in the gas are in random motion, thermal motion. When these molecules are in thermal motion, due to the thermal motion, the spectrum is widened. You might have seen a train, incoming train, coming very far away. Let us imagine an incoming train very far away. When the train is very far away and it is making the horn noise, the horn noise will be very feeble. The frequency will be very low. When the train approaches the observer standing in the platform, the frequency of it appears that the frequency of the horn will be increasing. It appears, this is what we call it to be the Doppler effect. Similarly, when an atom or a molecule in a gas is in thermal motion, when it approaches the observer, automatically the frequency increases. When it goes away from the observer, automatically the frequency decreases. That's why there will be a shift in the wavelength. And that shift in the wavelength, this d lambda will be equal to lambda nu by c, lambda v by c, where v is the velocity of the electron or the atom or the molecule. You all will know that half mv square will be equal to 3 by 2 kT. Therefore, from here we can find out the value of v will be equal to square root of 3 kT. That should be substituted here. Therefore, the Doppler broadening will be equal to that broadening wavelength, the d lambda will be equal to square root of 3 kT divided by m. And this is what we have already studied in the Doppler effect also. Similarly, if you think of the collision broadening, there will be a random motion of atoms and the molecules, but at the same time there is a possibility of collision between the atoms and the molecules. When you increase the pressure, automatically the atoms and the molecules will be occupied in a small region. Therefore, there will be a possibility of collision. Because of the collision, the atom or the molecule in the excited state will be coming down to the ground state. Therefore, the possibility of staying in the excited state will be reduced. Therefore, there will be a variation in the time interval in the excited state. Delta t, there will be a change in the delta t. When there is an uncertainty in the time, there should be an uncertainty in the energy because of the uncertainty principle. Therefore, energy will also have uncertainty that is equivalent to the shift in the or broadening in the spectral line. And this is what we call it to be the collision broadening. So, my dear students and my dear friends, you have studied the X-ray spectra, the various types of X-ray spectra, Moseley's law, And finally, we have studied the line progeny. Hope that you would have understood all these concepts. Thank you for your listening.
இந்த வீடியோ உங்களுக்கு பிடிச்சிருந்ததுன்னா லைக் பண்ணுங்கள், ஷேர் பண்ணுங்கள், கமெண்ட் பண்ணுங்கள். இதே மாதிரி இன்னும் நிறைய வீடியோஸ் பார்க்கணுன்னா மறக்காமல் டார்ஜில் லேர்னிங் ஹப்பை சப்ஸ்கிரைப் பண்ணுங்கள். அந்த பெல் ஐக்கானையும் ப்ரெஸ் பண்ணுங்கள்.